There are three sides to every story. Your side, my side, and then there's the third side, which is the truth. Many times people believe that their side is the truth. And this interview was with somebody whose opinion may not be yours, but they believe their side, the truth, is the third side of the story that you need to hear. With me right now is Tom Hoefling. He's running for president for America's Party. And I know that if you're like me, this is a party you might not know about, might not know much about, that is. And you also might not know much about Tom Hoefling. So, Tom, I'd like to take whatever amount of time you want to give us right now to discuss you, your candidacy, and then I do have some particular specific questions I know people will want to hear the answers to. So, to begin with, can you tell us a little bit about you and America's Party?
Oh, sure. Don, thanks for having me here tonight. Well, I've been involved in political things for about 2 decades, maybe a little more. I started out at the precinct level here in Republican politics in my home state of Iowa. Very quickly got a seat on the Republican State Committee. I started working on campaigns, and over the years I worked on a lot of campaigns at all levels all across this country. I've primarily considered myself more than a political consultant. I'm really an activist, a pro-life activist, a pro-family activist. You know, I've been very involved in the border security movement, fundamental tax reform, property rights, a lot of different stuff over the years. A few years back, I was believing that the Republican Party was moving away from me. We'd always had a problem with the GOP getting them to support our truly conservative candidates. But it just got worse and worse, to the point that 4 years ago, you know, frankly, they didn't count our votes here in Iowa. We were supporting Dr. Alan Keyes, and the Republican Party blackballed him, and they didn't count his votes. And then, of course, it was becoming apparent they were getting ready to nominate John McCain, a man who had opposed everything I stand for decades, and especially in the back rooms of the Senate, opposing pro-life, pro-family legislation, political operations, pushing the most liberal, pro-abortion, liberal Republican candidates possible. And that was at the point I just said, that's it, we're starting a new party. So we did. At first we called it America's Independent Party. We've since shortened that to America's Party. 4 years ago, our first nominee was Dr. Alan Keyes. This year, our party in February nominated me for president. Subsequently, I picked up the nomination of the American Independent Party in California. So we managed to get the California ballot line that way.
So is it fair to say, Tom, that to the casual observer on the spectrum, you would consider yourself, and I'm generalizing with this, but you would consider yourself and your party affiliation what would be classically right-wing, classically conservative?
I believe that my political philosophy is in perfect line with the founders of this republic, the men who penned the Declaration of Independence, the men who framed our Constitution. That's what my politics is, what their politics was. In the modern context, I guess you could call me a Reagan conservative. I'm not an isolationist. I'm also not a globalist. I'm a peace through strength Reagan conservative on foreign policy. I'm a 14th Amendment personhood pro-lifer. I believe in the defense of the natural family and the one man, one woman institution of marriage. You know, labels can only take you so far, but using the modern labels, yes, I am a conservative.
Right, and it's those modern labels that most Americans these days have been dumbed down to accept: left, right, conservative, liberal. But you said something a moment ago that I want to go back to, and that was that you at once would have aligned yourself very specifically with the Republican Party, but over time you began to feel like the party was leaving you. I don't know if those were the words you used, but I think that was
yeah.
Okay. Tell me more about that, because there's a lot of people that were once Republican who are now echoing those same sentiments.
Well, let me take it all the way to the extreme end of the spectrum, where we are standing right now. On the congressional level, the Republican Party is refusing to fund Todd Akin in Missouri. There are other conservative candidates they refuse to fund. But they've poured more than $1 million into an openly homosexual, hardcore left-wing Republican candidate for Congress up in Massachusetts, one of Paul Ryan's young guns.
You used language that 20 years ago would have been extremely odd. You said, and if I can quote you, you said a left-wing, openly homosexual Republican. Now that's odd because you would not associate those with the core Republican Party.
Well,
that seems oxymoronic, but there are many Republicans today who would think as you do.
You know, I've seen surveys. You know, I'm not a big fan of polls because overwhelmingly polls are used to manipulate people, not to report on reality. You know, we've received more than 50 polling calls into our household in the last month, and every call, they give you two choices, Romney or Obama. So they're creating reality. But, true polling, surveying has its usefulness, and you can learn things from it. And over the years, there have been extensive surveys, with thousands and thousands of respondents across the country, and they show, again and again, in every state in the union, all 50 states, there are more self-identified conservatives than there are self-identified liberals by far. If that is the case, that there's more of us than there are of them, okay, we at least make up a solid plurality. Why are we not being represented in all 50 states? And the answer can only be that the Republican Party is a false flag operation. It has the reputation of being the conservative party, but it's just not. We all participated in the Tea Party movement. Some of us helped drive it from the beginning, okay? But we have 1.5 million, 2 million people. They march in Washington, D.C. They march down the street. Their signs are my message. And really, if you boil their message down to one thing, it's we want our country back. They get up to the stage, which is controlled by Dick Armey and the Republicans, and the message coming from the stage is we're the Republicans and we want our power back. But then in 2010, we elect all of these so-called Tea Party congressmen. They go up to the Hill, and the first thing they hear out of John Boehner is a lecture on how if they won't support raising the debt ceiling $2.5 trillion, they're a bunch of big babies. And guess what? Virtually all of them, almost all of them caved. And in the end, there were only 8 Republicans who did not support some plan or another to raise the debt ceiling $2.5 trillion. All this theater over back and forth between Obama and the Republicans, it was all phony. The main point was we're going to raise the debt ceiling and rob our posterity of their God-given right to government by consent by continuing to pile debts on them that we cannot pay in this generation. But they were in agreement on the main point. Now, let me give you another example. Obamacare. The Republicans voted against Obamacare more than 30 times, right? But in recent weeks, through the vehicle of the continuing resolution, the Republican-controlled House funded Obamacare. They fully funded it. So, Barack Obama, Reid, and Pelosi built the vehicle, and now the Republicans are paying the payments and putting the gas in the tank and buying the tires and the oil.
I'm sure you watched what happened to Ron Paul over the last 4 years. I would love to hear you speak to the issue of the marginalization of third-party conservatives, which is what Ron Paul really was. How would you speak and what would you say to those who are listening right now and cheering what you've said so far, your overarching philosophical points? How do you convert them from philosophically aligned with you to getting out there and promoting and supporting your candidacy? First
of all, I would disagree with your point that Ron Paul is a conservative. Ron Paul is a libertarian. I'm not philosophically aligned with Ron Paul. Now, some people in a cursory glance might think so, but really I have some deep disagreements with Dr. Paul. In terms of process and the way he was treated in the GOP, I told everyone. I told top Ron Paul people all along, that's exactly what they're going to do to you. And that's what they're going to do to every conservative. Where that process ended up in Tampa, that was not an American political convention. That was a Soviet propaganda show where they didn't have actual votes. The results of voice votes were up on the teleprompter before they ever had the vote. That's a sham. And what they did to Ron Paul was shameful. And not just to Ron Paul, I heard one delegate down there quoted as saying that if there hadn't been a single delegate in a single seat, the results would have been exactly the same. And that's true. You're talking about a process which is shameful to all of us. All Americans ought to be ashamed of that. So if someone hears your specifics and they man, I really want to get behind Tom Hoefling, how do you convince them that their voice gets heard in what we have now is clearly a two-party monopoly, or more accurately, a one-party monopoly? What do you, Tom Hoefling, say to that person to get them energized to come out and support you? Well, there's two sides to this. And there's two things that America's Party and my efforts over many years have been focused on. One side is the principled side. We have an utterly unprincipled, corrupt political class of both major parties. So we have the principled problem, and I'll address that in a minute. Then we have the practical side, and it's especially acute at the presidential level. We have a process that is in no way run, operated, owned by we the people. It is not of the people, by the people, for the people in any way. It is completely owned, lock, stock, and barrel, by the elites, by the money interests, and by the major media conglomerates. They own it. These debates that are going on, the debate commission, the presidential debate commission, it's all liberals, okay? In fact, their newest addition to that commission is Father John Jenkins, the guy at Notre Dame who brought Obama in there and heaped him with honors to the disgrace of that fine institution.
There are people that would be self-described Republicans involved in that process, but like you said earlier, they're just as liberal. They may have been Jimmy Carter, 30 years ago. So your point being that the entire process is run by liberals no matter what their title is. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah, this has nothing to do with party. It's liberal Democrats and liberal Republicans. People like ex-Senator Danforth. He never met a Democrat he didn't love, and you could just go right up the line. And I watched the first debate. I forced myself to do it, even though I really can't stand to watch these people for very long. I made it about 2/3 of the way through. I was proud of myself. I watched the opening, and I was watching on C-SPAN, so I saw the opening proceedings, right? And the guy gets up there, and he tells that crowd, he points his finger at him, and you can't make a peep, you can't make any noise, right? So to whatever extent, maybe somebody in that crowd might have represented some sort of conservative viewpoint. There was no hint of any conservative or any conservative principles anywhere involved. And the people themselves were told, you hush up, do not interfere with this show. And this is one of the reasons I get so offended at this whole lesser of two evils mentality that's taken hold of Christendom, conservatism, because what they're doing when they go down this road of lesser of two evils is they're declaring the end of Republican representative self-government. Because our elections, we're supposed to vote for the people who represent us. And they're saying, no, you don't get any choices that actually represent you. You don't get any of those. Our process doesn't allow for that.
It's very weird the way you segued into that, because at your website, there's a heading, no election but evil. And the quote is, when you tell me I have no choice but evil in this election, frankly, you're declaring the end of elections, of representative self-government in America, because by definition, the word election means choice. And that's a quote from you, October 5th of this year. And there are a lot of people who feel like that they have a choice between a rapist and a pedophile, and they don't want to vote for either one. And it seems like election after election, they're handed the idea of vote for this guy, not because you want him specifically, but because you don't want the other guy. Now, it seems like over time, we're ending up with worse and worse choices, which gets me right back to a philosophical question I want to ask you before we get into the specifics of your campaign. Talk to the person who wants to support you. I mean, they're going to get out there and they're going to hit the pavement for you or people like you with your ideas. Do they have hope? Do you see the system changing? Do you see any sort of philosophical rift about to take place?
We're running a campaign like no one has ever seen before. Now, the political professionals, of course, all think I'm insane. We're running an old-fashioned front porch campaign. In 1896, William McKinley ran for president. He never left his front porch. Now, delegations came from all over the country, and they sat on his porch. Reporters came with their little notepads and scratched notes and wrote stories. But he never left his front porch. His final front porch address was given from the steps of the Capitol when he was sworn in. That's the way campaigns for president were once run in this country. That's the kind of campaign we're running. If you go on my website, there's a link that says, Tom Hoefling, I don't want your money. People don't have to come and trample down my flower beds and bug my dogs and my kids and my wife, because we have these wonderful free tools. We have free email. We have free web radio, free conference calling, free web video. We all have a cell phone on our belt. We all have a computer and a modem. I always remind people, the founders of this country got their message out with handwritten letters delivered via horseback. We don't need the media, and this is what I'm trying to get to. We're blackballing the media and the money now. We're saying, look, we don't need them. We can communicate with one another just fine. Thank you very much. And guess what? We don't have to pay a bunch of political hacks, and we don't have to pour billions of dollars into the media conglomerates to do it. We're trying to redo the way you do politics in this country by example. We're saying, look, we're looking for 1 million principled Americans who still hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Trying to find 1 million people like that, and we're saying, okay, you're the campaign manager. Your only job is, by whatever means you can devise, we can give you all kinds of ideas, whatever. Go find 50 to 100 or more people, drag them to the polls, and guess what? We win.
If they vote for you, what do they get when you win?
Well, again, on the principled side, our efforts are to modernize radical, okay? In the practical means that I just described to the modern mind is radical, but it's even more radical. Now, it wouldn't have once been radical in this country, but No, I want to shut down the abortion clinics, Don. And to whatever extent I could carry that out in the office of President of the United States, I would do that. I want our southern border secure. As soon as I sat down in the Oval Office, I would sign a presidential finding that our open southern border represents clear and present danger to the security of the United States. And I would use every resource of the United States to secure that border. I oppose Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. I oppose Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. I want to take this country back out of socialism that they launched us into. I want a return. People say, how can you get the government under control? How can you get debt under control? It's easy. It's the unconstitutional spending, stupid.
Now, what you the things that you've said, I think they resonate with a lot of folks who believe those things. Like if you talk to most people that are pro-life, they are probably also going to be have a harder stance on immigration, and they probably will have a harder line on the New Deal, et cetera. So once you've gotten that demographic on your side, then you've got a very vocal and strident group of supporters. However, is Romney not correct when he says that there's 47% out there that aren't going to meet that criteria? Because I think that's what Romney was really talking about when he talked about the 47%. How do you convince the vast majority when you've got almost half or maybe more than half of America on the government dole? How do you convince those folks that what you prescribe would be what the country needs?
Well, you tell them the truth and you let the chips fall where they may. That's what George Washington did. He said, let us raise a standard to which the wise and honest can repair. The event is in the hand of God. That was his attitude. That quote is the motto for our party, and it has been for the last 4 years. That's our attitude. We are simply saying, this is the plumb line of principle. These are the principles that this country was founded upon, the natural law principles that we find in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, property, and their defense. The defense of our national sovereignty, our national territory, our national interests. We intend to make that a bright line to hold up to the American people and remind them, this is what America is, remember? So we intend to, by taking a principled stance, raising up real statesmen, inspiring people to begin to do the right thing for their posterity, not just for themselves, but for the next generations that are coming along here.
Is it fair to say then that you would view the major parties as being ends justifying the means, whereas what you would say is the means and the ends are the same? Your principles are the means and they are the ends. And
yes. My assertion is that the compromise of principle may appear wise up front in the short run, but actually it's surrender. But doing the right thing over the long haul is actually the practical thing to do. Some great examples from history. William Wilberforce in Great Britain. He played the whole incrementalist compromise game for years and years on slavery, and it got him nowhere. He finally figured out, not only is this wrong, what I'm doing, but it doesn't work. And so he began to take a hard line and call for just total abolishment of the slave trade in the British Empire. And guess what? He won.
It sounds like you would not lose hope if either Romney or Obama won. Your hope rests in your beliefs and your values.
I've said many times that with God, Barack Obama can't hurt us. Without God, George Washington could not save us. See, we have a Democrat Party who booed God 3 times at their convention. We have a Republican Party that once in a while, for political whatever, will pay lip service to God. But we have a whole conservative movement now who is acting like God doesn't exist. I mean, they're Christians. They talk like Christians. They say they're Christians. Okay, but they're acting like he doesn't exist. In other words, we have to compromise with evil in order to get ahead and get some kind of ground. But they're leaving God out of the equation. God ain't going to bless that. Look, you and I, if we were going to go to dinner, we could compromise on what to have for dinner. If we were going to go to a movie, we could compromise on what we were going to go watch. But I'm talking about the core principles of the Republic that no American should be compromising. The defense of innocent human life, equality before God and the law. There should be no compromise on that. That's where I'm talking, no compromise, and that's what I'm trying to inculcate back into the conservative movement and back into the pro-life movement, which is completely compromised morally right now, too.
Let me ask about an issue for which there's been much compromise by both parties, and that is the issue of handing over to bankers trillions of dollars, TARP, etc., all the handouts, the bailouts, the giveaways. How do you feel personally about the fact that bankers have never been more profitable on the backs of our children and our grandchildren? And structurally, what would you do to change, and you can begin anywhere you like, the Federal Reserve System, fractional reserve banking, TARP? Well, where do you stand on these issues?
Well, I stand against them because what those things, the cause of those things coming to be is the abandonment of their own responsibilities in the Congress. You see, our Constitution gives the Congress the appropriate power over those things, and they've handed them over to quasi-governmental, top-down, elitist organizations that they're what I call neither man nor beast. They're not accountable as government is accountable, and they're not actually free market businesses that are accountable to their customers. It's kind of like the post office now. They tried to. I live in a little town here in Iowa, and here some months ago they tried to shut down our post office. And, they had a town meeting, they have these meetings to make everybody feel like they're listening. It's just a bureaucrat they send down who can't actually do anything. The governor of Iowa was standing right next to me. All of our politicians were telling us we can't do anything about it because, the U.S. Postal Service, they're not under our authority. And you complain to the U.S. Postal Service and it's some faceless, nameless board in Washington, D.C. that nobody's accountable. So I view the Fed pretty much the same way, except on steroids.
So you would you be in favor of an auditing the Fed or an ending the Fed? A lot of people think auditing is too weak. Would you end the Fed if you had the chance?
We have to be a bit careful when it comes to that because we don't want to just melt down our whole financial system. I believe we could, and again, you've got to get the right people in Congress. You see, I'm not just running for president. We're trying to build a foundation to run thousands of people for public office in 2014 and 2016. You got to get people in Congress who could get together and devise a new monetary system and a tax system that is actually bottom up instead of top down. I believe in in many areas, I promote what I call TLC, which is true local control. Education would be one example. I don't like federal involvement. It's not constitutional. I don't even like sending our education dollars down to the state capitol. I think it's stupid. Run it through a big bureaucracy and send a few cents back with strings attached. I think it's stupid. I think we need to devise a monetary system like that.
What monetary system would you devise? Do you have an idea, a plan? Would it be a gold standard? Would it be a fiat without debt standard? Would it be tally sticks? Would it be seashells? What would it be?
Well, I wouldn't. I don't support a pure gold standard because I believe that would concentrate way too much power in too few hands. I think we could have multiple forms of commodity-based, metals-based. We could have a number of ways that are actually based in real-world value. Don, I can't tell you that I have all the answers to this particular subject. One of the things I've committed to do if the miracle would happen and I would get elected is to convene what I would call an economic Manhattan Project. And get all of our best minds in a room and keep them there until we work through all these things. It came up with something that was truly based in liberty and that was truly putting the power back with the individual, with the family, with the community, and that would conform with our Constitution. So I can't sit here and tell you I have this fine-tuned, perfect plan for how to fix our economy, I think I know how to fix our tax system. That's fairly simple. See, I never tell people I can save the country, okay? The only people that can save the country are the American people themselves. Well, I'm just one guy on my front porch in Iowa. I'm just one person, and I'm a poor man. I mean, I'm not a wealthy individual like Romney. I don't have a university degrees like Romney and Obama. Okay, I'm just a poor guy in Iowa who's given a lot of thought and a lot of work to this whole arena for a lot of years. But I don't think I can fix this country. We've built our party in such a way as to guarantee that unless the people do it themselves, it won't get done. So we've intentionally said, look, we're not going to have any phony fixes. We're not going to put some guy up on a pedestal and expect him to ride to our rescue and save us, okay? Look, the states I haven't got on the ballot, I tried. I did what I could. But in the end, it was the people in those states who didn't rise up and put me on the ballot.
Well,
so be it.
Yeah, the president's job is not to be a mortgage banker, an employment agent, or a soother of psychological problems after people get shot, in gunfights.
Yeah.
The president's job is to defend the Constitution.
TheExaminer.com, after the first Obama-Romney debate, they sent me a list of the questions that they were asked, and they said, can you please answer these? So I did. And then the last debate between Biden and Ryan, they sent it to my running mate, J.D. Ellis, and he answered them. They're up on TomHoefling.com if you want to go read both sets of answers. But one of the questions had to do with jobs. What are you going to do about jobs? And I told him flat out, it's not the job of the President of the United States to give you a job. The only jobs government can create are government jobs or subsidized jobs, and we already have way too many of those. Last night, after this debate last night, which I still haven't watched, but they sent me again the list of questions, and I noticed the first one was, I think it was probably some student saying, how are you going to guarantee me that I'm going to do something, have something after I graduate?
Right.
I really want to give them a blunt answer. I haven't answered them yet. I've got until like Friday. But I want to answer and say, grow up. The government is not your mother. That whole first debate, I did watch 2/3 of it. It was all an argument over who could best micromanage the welfare state and the lives of the American people. It was disgusting.
What would you want people to do now after they're done listening to this? Where do you want them to go immediately, and what do you want them to do?
And if they totally got it, if they agree with what I'm doing and saying, and they can read it on the website, go out and get 50 or 100 people and get them to the polls to vote for Tom Hoefling. If they have more questions, one of the beauties of the way I'm running the campaign is I get to talk to real people all day long, every day. That's what I do. I don't have to talk to Wolf Blitzer. I don't have to talk to political hacks. I don't have to spend all day raising money. I'm running a front porch campaign. I'm on Facebook. I have a lot of room on my Thomas Hoefling account if you want to go there, and you can ask me anything you want. And I work very hard to answer all of my correspondence. It's getting harder and harder the more this gets ramped up. But you can talk to me. We also, for 5 years now, have done 2 twice-a-week national conference calls. If you go to americaspartynews.com, in the top right-hand corner on every page, there's a link to America's Summit, Restore the Republic. And there's phone numbers there. So if you want to talk to me personally and ask me the hardest questions you can think of, as long as people come there and they act decent and they're of goodwill, we want to talk to everybody that we can, and we'll do that. And you'll have the benefit not just of talking to me, but to dozens and dozens of our other party leaders that are rising up around the country. And you can find the best Americans I know, just solid citizens. You don't know any of their names. They're not names, okay? These are just regular people who are principled, who are standing for it to try and take their country back.
Well, in terms of not knowing their names, Americans need to understand that on their ballot and on the ballot in many states, there are names that they're not going to know, but after this interview with you, Tom Hoefling should not be a name they don't know. And visiting your website is a great place to start. I appreciate your time with me, Tom. If in the future you'd like to do a follow-up interview and discuss more specific issues, that'd be great. But I just wanted to give you a chance to come out and present the case and speak about what you believe.
I appreciate the opportunity to do so, and it was a great interview. You did a great job. Give me a call in a week or so, and let's do this again on a night.
All right, Tom. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.